Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to the 41st Right and Left Discussion Forum. The purpose of our discussion forum is to demonstrate that civility not only matters, but it is the backbone of a peaceful and prosperous society. Without civility, there can be neither a permanent peace or prosperity. Our topic today concerns the current relevancy of organizations that were formed to fight the oppression of minorities and women. Our panel today, beginning on my left, is Dave Scott, a retired reporter from the Akron Beacon Journal. On his left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. And on his left is Patty Haskins, retired math teacher and current member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left, taking part in our forum for the very first time, is Tom Finley. Tom is a former middle school principal, vice president of human resources development for Rubbermaid Incorporated, and a current partner with the Great Lakes Resource Center, and also a recent conqueror of Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the highest freestanding mountain in the world. And Tom's still resting up from that.
That's true.
Dave, I'm going to start with you. There are currently over 300 organizations whose mission is to protect the civil rights of racial minorities and women. Do you think that 50 years after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that these groups continue to address legitimate concerns?
Well, let's talk about this from a civility standpoint. And I'd like to say that I was concerned when I first heard about the topic, because it's one of the things that many people tell me is uncivil is when others say that their sensitivities are not valid. It's also true that people are offended when they're told that they're racist or that their behavior is racist. The difficulty here is that we cannot all the time empathize with people who are in other situations, other conditions. And for us to say this organization is not valid or should disband is to speak out in a place that probably will cause some hard feelings. If these places and organizations are to reevaluate their necessity, it should be them and not us to address that issue.
That's at the beginning and the end of your comment on
yes,
that. No,
yes.
that's,
yeah.
Bryan, where do you come down on this subject?
I had sort of the same thoughts, but maybe a little more to the point. I thought, how will a 55-year-old white middle-aged guy address a topic that I really haven't ever experienced, oppression? I was interested in hearing what Patty might have to say. I really was at a loss to look at, and I think an organization that feels as though they have purpose. I would think that sometimes they do have some what I would consider mission drift. You know, they kind of get off of maybe their original intent. But if a group feels as though they have been oppressed or somehow they've been kept down or kept back from meeting their full purpose, I'm not sure that I was really qualified. I don't think I've had experiences in my life that have ever led me to believe that I've been oppressed. I grew up in a very diverse social setting. As I've mentioned before, my father was in the military. We attended elementary school and middle school on military installations where black, white, Puerto Rican, Spanish, Filipino, German, you name it. It was just a real melting pot of people. And some people would say that the government uses the military in social experiments and stuff. So I've never really felt, you know, a need to join a group like that. But I would be interested in what Patty has to say, and I don't want to duck the issue, but I'm just...
But you're doing it anyway.
I'm finding it hard to argue, you know, if someone feels as though they need to be part of a group, and that group gives them the voice that they need, you know, who am I to say that it's not working for them? With the caveat that sometimes we get this you know, mission drift. You know, they get into areas that really, I'm not sure, benefit their original cause. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just.
Patty, we're all waiting with bated breath now.
I do think the groups do have relevance in today's society. Now, things have changed, and there have been, since the Civil Rights Act and so forth. I remember sitting in a college class as the only female in the room and being told by the professor that I did not belong there because I was a woman. And at the time you could say that, and that's not the case anymore. But I look at examples. I mean, just look at the House of Representatives. It is by nature of the name. It is to be a representative group for the country. And the diversity in the House of Representatives does not represent the diversity in this country. It is primarily white males. There is a shortage of women. There is a shortage of ethnicities. And while I think in some cases it is difficult to legislate this type of thing, part of the problem, of course, is the perception that people have, and your own values and your social views cannot be legislated. For other areas, for minorities, I was watching the news just this morning, and it was, I want to say Louisiana, but I probably have the wrong state. They were showing a police cam video. A black man had pulled into a convenience area and unbuckled his seatbelt. I think he probably unbuckled it on the way in. Was getting out of the car and was standing next to the door, and a police officer pulled up behind him and told him that he wanted to see his license. The gentleman turned to reach for his license. The officer pulled out his gun. He said, "Get out of the car." The man turned around and he shot him, injuring him in the hip. The man is okay. He was able to walk away, and he's going, "What did I do? I don't have a gun." And the officer is yelling at him, to get down on the ground. I would like to think that there was not some type of racial profiling going on there, but my head says no. I know that the officer was fired already for this action. But it's those types of situations that still occur, which shows us, I think, that there is still a need for organizations that will promote the interests of minorities and of different groups. I mean, we have special interest groups for the oil groups. We have special interests for any types of power groups, for the NRA, school teachers, all of these, and they're protecting the interests of those groups. And while I disagree with a lot of them and think maybe they have too much power in the government, if we do not have these organizations that represent women, that represent Hispanics, that represent the African American people, I think it would be too easy to ignore these cases of discrimination that still exist in this country. Now, do they go overboard sometimes, seeing racism where it doesn't exist, seeing discrimination where it doesn't exist? Yes. But we need to keep it in the forefront so that we can try to reach for some type of equality in the country.
But even to be told that they're making mistakes by someone who's not part of their group is a perilous issue. It's patronizing, basically.
It is, exactly.
Thomas, let's hear your thoughts on this subject.
Well, and to answer the original question, I think they are still relevant to these organizations, perhaps even more so today. I looked at it from a bigger picture, just from a behavioral standpoint, that is of organizations. And this is some of what has been referenced already, but you said mission drift, for instance. In order for organizations to be relevant to their constituency, their customers, for instance, there does need to be periodically this check on purpose and mission. And that is kind of perilous without some way to measure results of that intent or mission in an organization. I don't know these organizations very well, so I can't quote or evaluate how effectively they've done that. The peril that exists with this is these organizations, like any organization, when you begin to drift, you do take on a different mission, and that mission is making sure the organization survives. And that's a lot different than what they were originally intended for. Example glaring is the unionism movement in this country and how they moved away from their support of the laboring person.
Mm-hmm. When Benjamin Jealous was appointed or elected to the presidency of the NAACP, he was asked in an interview what he thought was his chief duty or chief responsibility as president of the NAACP. And he said his chief responsibility was to stoke the flames of outrage. When I heard that, I thought, stoking the flames of outrage, how does that advance the inner city youth problems and school dropout rates? Doesn't it just cause more conflict and more divisiveness and generate more donations to the NAACP?
See, I don't know that some people will not look at it as a. I don't want to, try to incite types of violence, but I think that for people to recognize that this problem exists, that there is still discrimination, they sometimes have to be outraged. They look at if they look at the situation and say, "Oh, it's not so bad that guy was stopped just because of his color in his car." They have to be outraged by the fact that a citizen in this country could be stopped for nothing more than the color of his skin. And perhaps that's what he is saying. Now, as far as inciting people, that's a whole other issue. I don't think he's trying to incite people that are in minorities to be outraged, but rather is saying the people that are looking at the situation need to be outraged enough to actually do something about it.
I think your question drifts from the topic because his statement deserves discussion.
Yes.
But it does not speak to the issue about whether the NAACP remains relevant or not. It means that one entity, an important one, perhaps even a leader, said something controversial and worthy of discussion, but it doesn't attack the foundation of the guiding principles of that organization. It's too easy to pick out individual actions and project them on the entire group. Mm-hmm. That's really a troublesome issue there.
Dave, I want to add to I don't think I'm disagreeing with you, but when a leader makes a statement like that, that right away reflects some sort of mission or purpose of an organization. So
it's certainly his intent to take them in that direction.
Yeah, it's a perilous kind of statement. And then I would go to you, Patty, or Patricia, Patty.
Whichever.
I would go to you and say that the words you began to use reflect anger, outrage, and anger is never a good strategy. So that would be my take on some of where this goes and some of the behaviors that do occur that we would call organizational behaviors in these organizations. To me, it becomes contradictory to their very existence when that kind of behavior and those kind of statements occur.
But it's the membership that needs to correct that situation.
No disagreement there. They are not being served.
Empathy is involved there, and there's a limit to how much you can empathize with somebody.
Well, tell me, Dave, the empathy with whom?
With the group and the people who are making a suggestion. Let me change it a little bit. We've had this issue of the Washington Redskins, and yes. People will say it's racist, and other people will say, no, it's not racist, and it's dumb of you to say that. Those are examples of people who are on both sides of an issue and failing to understand the sensibilities of the people who disagree with them. And that's where civility comes in, mm-hmm. because you need to at least respect the idea that even if you disagree with their conclusion, you have to accept their feelings and that somebody disagrees with you. You can't project that on them.
I read an interesting article in doing a little research about how the origins of the Rainbow Coalition, and everybody sort of attributes that to Jesse Jackson. Actually, it was the Black Panther Party in Chicago that started it.
Yes.
And they brought together various groups, very different groups together. And I found myself agreeing that when you bring very different groups together to attack a root cause, you're much better able and probably have much better success in doing that than pushing people out that don't share your strident view about a particular issue. And when you hear when you hear Black Panther, that strikes fear in a lot of people's hearts. But they brought together this group. It just happened to be Jesse Jackson that I think he copyrighted the term or whatever, Rainbow Coalition, and took it in a direction that originally it wasn't meant to be. And this bringing people together to address and attack an issue is a lot better than pushing people away and attacking it from an aggressive, angry, standpoint. And so when people make comments like that, it sort of piques my interest as to what is the real goal now. Is it really to help women, or is it to advance some sort of hidden political agenda, or is it about power? Is it about using a group to get to a particular area that you want to be in? So I think I really have to step back and look at those types of things that happen.
You mentioned the number of groups, I think, and this deals also with the mission. The mission on some of these groups has expanded globally now. If you look at the progress made in this country, but there's still slavery in the world. There are still countries that treat women as chattel. And I think many of these groups and some new ones have formed because they recognize, okay, we've got a toehold here in the United States. We need to expand our work globally and deal with those situations. And that is, you started by saying these groups still are very relevant because there is still inequity within the world.
I don't think that there's any doubt, and I don't think that anyone would ever argue the point that this country has a long history of discrimination against blacks, females, Hispanics, and so forth. But I'd like to think we've made a lot of progress in the last 50 years,
Yes.
And that continuing to hammer away on the shortcomings of our culture, I'm concerned that it does more harm than good. I'm thinking about young people, young girls, minorities in school, constantly hearing things about wage gaps and glass ceilings and selective hiring and discrimination in promotions and all. And I'm wondering what that does to their ambition. They're being told in a lot of ways, you don't have a chance. And that, why even try? Particularly if some young student is on the fence, trying to decide exactly how much effort am I going to put into school and for what reason. And I'm told that my future is really kind of muddy because as a black person or a Hispanic or a female, the cards are stacked against me. Does that have a negative impact on that young person?
Yeah, but what are you going to do about it?
Well, and I think that
maybe stop emphasizing all the negatives.
what you're
I don't
saying,
think that
though,
can be
to
done.
these women is that it's not that you can't do it. You're saying this problem exists, and we're going to work to change that situation for you so that you can succeed.
Any alternative is also problematic because if you don't tell them those things, there are things that they need to know. If you're talking about a matter of degree, anybody could agree with that. But remember also the white kids in those classes are hearing that too, and maybe that's something that they're really not aware of.
Well,
And especially when they go deeper and they talk about the details of it, and you see this is how that happened, and this is how it was promoted by a person who was blind to the issues involved, or even to the damage of what they had done.
This is where the concept of measurement comes in and accountability as far as an organization. when you are focusing on reporting negatives about, you're not reporting the results of, the positives about your organization and where it's going, and that you, in doing so, can promote hope for those people who are being targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So without that occurring, that's an organizational behavior. It's a leadership problem. And you can look at any organization today and find that the number one issue in organizations is leadership or lack of competent leadership. That's why it's paid such a high amount of money, as a matter of fact, and still we get failures occurring. When it's corporations, it's dollar and cents as results, and customers leave. When it's an organization like we're talking about now, apathy begins to occur among the membership. And when that happens, the first place an organization, to me, and a leader looks to in these kind of organizations is, what are you doing? What are you promoting in terms of a positive purpose? And how are you measuring it? How are you communicating that to your constituency?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to bring it a little closer to home. I have a set of twins. Today's their birthday, a boy and a girl. And we did our best as parents to set up an environment where both of them had the same opportunities. They both went off to school. We expected the best out of them. There wasn't a different standard for our daughter. There wasn't a higher standard for our son. There was one standard, and we expected that. Did we ever see, there were times when, maybe in their sports, there was a separation because of our daughter's ability or her physical ability to, do certain things. I think that there is some discrimination there, but it's because of physical, their inability to actually do it. They can't compete. My wife and I have always done our best to encourage our children to do the best that they can possibly do and push themselves. They both have degrees in business, which is really kind of odd, strange. A lot of women don't go into business, they've done very well. So I think as parents and as people that are involved with kids on a daily basis, we should encourage them to go into areas that might be a little more difficult, or get past some of those stereotypes, or maybe there are some institutional biases, built in. You read plenty of studies. A lot of engineers are men. Why is that? When girls aren't encouraged to go into those fields.
We all want a meritocracy, but we don't have it yet.
Right.
Has Robin been the only female mayor Wadsworth has ever had?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, was
No,
there
for a short period of time, Gwen Rivers was.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yes, when Bob Daniels passed away, she was
president of council, and then she took over.
Yes, for a brief
Maybe you
period.
should first elected.
Elected
Yes, she's elected.
mayor.
Yeah. The one of the things that concerns me, and I'm enough of a cynic to think that money is at the bottom of almost everything. When I was in business school, every now and then the subject would come up: what's the first responsibility of corporate management? And the right answer was usually survival of the corporation. And the second one is to generate stockholder wealth and so forth. But when I think about these organizations that started 50-some years ago, and they are now, some of them are very large, they've got big staffs, they've got real estate, they own buildings that have to be managed, and they got big budgets. and I'm wondering if their mission hasn't drifted, number one, to survival of the organization. And in order to do that, they have to continue to become, or to maintain their relevancy. Even though they've accomplished their purpose, they may, how many times do we have to redefine what racism is, or gender discrimination, or sexual assault? We keep redefining these things downward to the point where a lot of them don't really mean much anymore. And I'm concerned that the organizations are existing primarily to exist, and that their mission is very unclear. I'm wondering, what are they really doing to help black youth? Whatever it is not working.
Well, just as with a corporation, where the solution comes from broad, extensive knowledge, openness, and the financial actions of the individuals. These organizations will be enhanced if we know more about the issues that they're talking about, and the people get to speak about that. Yes, racism is defined differently than when I was young. I don't know, I guess I disagree with you to the extent that it is reached the point where it's no longer racism. I think there is a lot more than we realize. Honestly, I do. And so you and I disagree on that.
Yeah.
But going deeper and looking at the actions that they're objecting to would inform both of us and help us make good decisions.
I remember seeing Denise D'Souza and Jesse Jackson on a panel together, and Denise D'Souza turned to Jesse Jackson and says, "Tell me, just what is it right now that's happening that is keeping people of our skin color from progressing? What is interfering with our ambitions?" And he said, "Well, just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there. It's institutionalized." And I've been scratching my head ever since. If you can't see it, how do you know it's there?
Well, the problem is, it's always been rationality. Discrimination has been a part of mankind. It's just taken different forms, different times, different places, but it's an ongoing evil, part of us as mankind. And I'm going to go back to leadership again. If you don't, as a leader, if you don't look at a bigger picture and keep it in front of you all the time, you are very prone to fail. And first fails you, but your organization ultimately fails. I would suggest the wrong business model, wrong model is in front of, when you use words like attack and the war on and these kind of things, that model is a military model.
Well, thank you very much. You know, unfortunately, the clock is ticking, and it's been a very good conversation. I wish we could go on, but I want to close with this quote from Henry Louis Gates. Dr. Gates said, "The sad truth is that the civil rights movement cannot be reborn until we identify the causes of black suffering, some of them self-inflicted. Why can't black leaders organize rallies around responsible sexuality, birth within marriage, parents reading to their children, and students staying in school and doing their homework?" Thank you, Skip. That's his nickname. Are you all familiar with Henry Louis Gates? Do you know who he is?
But I don't know directly.
He's the one who was involved in that problem up in Cambridge